Tonight, the King 5 investigators exposed a government contractor at Hanford that disregarded employees' complaints and science and waited for months before investigating strong evidence that nuclear waste was leaking from an underground tank.
And it's not just any old tank. This one holds the most deadly waste at the entire Hanford site near the Tri-Cities in eastern Washington. King 5 investigator Susanna Frame joins us now with the first report in her series, Hanford's Dirty Secrets. Susanna.
Lori and Dennis, the contractor we're talking about is the Richland-based Washington River Protection Solutions, or WRPS. Their job is to keep the public and the environment safe from the millions of gallons of radioactive waste at Hanford. The federal government pays them millions of dollars to do so. But we found WRPS looked the other way when faced with evidence that they had a major problem on their hands. You're looking at one of the most scenic stretches of the Columbia River, undammed for 50 miles, a sanctuary for endangered wildlife, spawning salmon, and toxic waste. The country's most dangerous nuclear dump, just 200 miles away from Seattle.
Hanford is the most contaminated facility in the United States and one of the top 10 in the world.
In 1943, the federal government began producing plutonium at Hanford. The main goal? Fuel the world's first nuclear bomb during World War II. By the 1980s, all plutonium production stopped at the site, but the government left behind a mess. The largest and most complex environmental cleanup effort in the world, with the worst of it sitting underground in massive tanks. For 25 years and counting, the race has been on. Get rid of the lethal junk in the tanks before it leaks all the way to the Columbia.
And if anything bad happens out there, Seattle will feel it.
Tom Carpenter is executive director of the watchdog group Hanford Challenge, based in Seattle.
The Columbia River gets contaminated, it eventually finds its way up here. If there's an explosion or a fire, then it can still come up here that way. So we're not safe from it. And we need to keep our eye on what we're being told out there.
And last year, the U.S. Department of Energy told us something big. For the first time, one of their double shell tanks was leaking, found during a routine, regularly scheduled inspection of the tank known as AY-102. And they released these photos. Radioactive and chemically lethal sludge oozing out of the main tank.
The fact that a double shell tank is leaking at the Hanford site is a game changer.
A major blow for sure. The double shells were supposed to be the toughest tanks around, the best shot at making sure the most deadly gunk wasn't going anywhere for decades.
It contains literally trillions and trillions of lethal doses of radiation in that waste.
Remember how the government told us they discovered this major problem during a routine inspection? That everyone was caught by surprise last year. We found that's not true. The evidence shows the contractor in charge of the tanks, WRPS, headquartered here in Richland, ignored strong evidence the tank was leaking for nearly a year before doing anything about it.
We knew that we had a severe problem.
Mike Geffrey has worked at Hanford for 26 years. In 2011, he responded to an alarm on AY-102. Leak detection equipment sent up signals that waste was escaping from the tank, leaking into what's called the annulus, the space between the main tank and the outer shell.
I mean, we never guessed in a million years that we're going to have a double shell tank leak.
Geffrey and a coworker checked the equipment and saw this. Those white flakes in the middle of your screen, tiny signs of big trouble. What looked like nuclear waste dried up on the gear. Then, something from that part of the tank they'd never seen before, a reading of radioactive contamination.
It was very shocking for us, for both of us. We kind of just kept looking at each other like, wow, that's really hot.
At that moment, was there really any doubt in your mind that you had a leak?
Oh no, I knew right then that we had a leak, that something was wrong down there.
Geffrey reported the findings right away to his bosses, who had a different opinion. The detection equipment, not the tank, must be broken.
They just kind of sat there and they just kind of went, well, are you sure that thing's calibrated? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I'm the one that does the calibrations on it. I'm the one that takes care of it. Of course I'm sure.
WRPS downplayed that first alarm. They reported to government officials that rainwater, not nuclear waste, most likely creeped onto that gear in the annulus. And the radioactive readings? They concluded it was simply leftover or legacy contamination from years ago. But King 5 found the company's own experts later discounted those explanations in a 400-page report. WRPS wrote the rainwater explanation seems problematic because of the radiation reading. And the legacy contamination theory, they wrote that area's been contamination-free since 1999.
Nothing added up that said this wasn't a problem. And yeah, they just chose not to do anything.
WRPS wouldn't go on camera, but issued a statement to King saying they didn't ignore anything, that they thoroughly evaluated events in 2011, and that experience gained over decades of tank farm operations led them to believe rainwater, not nuclear waste, was collecting in the annulus of AY-102.
If your alarm clock goes off, hey, it's time to go to work. If your alarm goes off for the tank, it's time to apparently wait another year.
Marco Kaltofen is a researcher near Boston. He's one of the top environmental radiation experts in the country. He says waiting to investigate signs of a leak is a serious mistake. The worst case, the most dangerous material on the planet makes its way all the way out of that tank.
Time is not our friend. This waste actually gets worse as time goes on. It's hot, it's corrosive, it eats through its container. It can't sit there, or it's going to be in the Columbia River, and there's no other choice.
Now, the contractor says they assumed this is rainwater because it had been raining hard for quite a few days in the Tri-Cities area before the first alarm sounded. So how much is leaked? WRPS tells us up to 520 gallons had escaped last year, and there hasn't been any real change since then. But we've just obtained records from the Department of Ecology showing that's not true. They report the waste is measurable and that it's grown by 25% from what they recorded in December.
All right. And so, Susanna, what happened to Mike Geffrey? Is he still working there?
Believe it or not, he still works there, and he's not known to be a big complainer or a disgruntled employee. He just said he got so fed up that no one was listening to him, so he contacted me, and he's still there, you know, doing his job.
Measuring all the radiation.
Yeah, and hoping that, you know, this won't backfire on him.
Wow. Thanks, Susanna.
Sure.